What up? It's your boy T-Bear. Her reaction. About to get into some. I'm trying to remember who do these videos well too. Yeah, Wrestling with Eddie does well too. We take a look at the best storyline from the 2000 to 2025 in WWE though. One thing about wrestling in general is the storyline. I mean, most time it's a feel-good storyline or a storyline that get the wrestling world buzzing. So without further ado, we're going to check a look at these wonderful storylines. Take a look back to memory lane and WWE for every year. Let's get it.
There have been a lot of great storylines in WWE over the years, but just what was the best angle of each year of this century? Well, that's exactly what we're going to be looking at right now, starting with the best of 2000, the McMahon-Helmsley era. Now,
yeah, here's the thing. I was just thinking about this too. They should have left it at just them two, man, or at least Shane. Adding Vince on there kind of defeat the purpose a little bit, just a little. Only reason I'm not is not too fond of, it's not too much of a bad, because it brought back evil Vince, but at the same time, because the point of the acts was to be against the authority. Stephanie rebelling, journey on his father to join Triple H was okay, as if it was okay. Possibly Shane kind of joint was okay, but it should have stopped there. Having DX associated with McMahon just did not seem right at all. It seemed like corporate DX sucking up to corporate. That's all. It seemed sucking up to the authority to me. Well, let's go. But again, it was an interesting storyline though as well too. Kevin's tuned in, wanting to see Triple H and DX get the ass kicked. Sherman and Vince get the ass kicked. Stephanie called a slut. Get chatted as a slut music time as well too. So yeah, this was an interesting.
While the idea of Triple H and Stephanie McMahon being a power couple in WWE might be normal by now, back in 2000, it was still a very new storyline. And the reason it came around here was because the December prior, The Game and the $1 Billion Princess had gotten married in kayfabe and decided to pool their resources. Obviously then, this gave the rest of the roster a big bad to fight against at the start of the millennium, as the whole McMahon-Helmsley angle became the overarching plot of both Raw and SmackDown.
Yeah.
And that's not the only reason
back when it was no brand split.
It's the top angle of 2000. No, there's also the fact it allowed Triple H to truly reach the main event level for the first time, with his feuds against the likes of Mick Foley, Kurt Angle, and The Rock throughout this 12-month period, confirming that he would be a top guy for the rest of his career. But that wouldn't be enough to see him be a part of the best storyline of 2001, as that honor would instead go to the Hardy Boys, Dudley Boys, and Edge and Christian feud. Of course, the story here was slightly different in that it wasn't told by using any backstage segments or promos, not for the most part at least. No, the story to this one was that you had three of the best tag teams of their generation, each wanting to prove they were deserving of holding the gold. So when it came time for them to meet in the ring then, as they did so numerous times over the course of 2001, they left the words at home and instead let their actions do the talking. Thank God they did then, because at WrestleMania 17 in particular, when all three duos met in a single bout for the WWF Tag Team titles, they were able to create pure magic in the form of one of the greatest spectacles in wrestling history to this day, TLC 2, with this still probably being the peak of tag team wrestling in WWE. But it wouldn't be a tag team feud dominating 2002. No, instead, that year, the best program would be carried out by Shawn Michaels and Triple H. Now this one was extra special because it gave us the return to the ring of HBK after what was believed to have been a career-ending back injury 4 years prior. And while it could have seen Shawn going at half...
Shawn he still got it. He was better than ever. Aged like fine wine in the ring. Dead serious though.
Speed to preserve his body, in the end, he turned out to have aged like a fine wine. So good was he here, in fact, and so good was his opponent Triple H in playing an evil heel, the pair were able to get fans invested to a level that it became the clear top angle of the year. Honestly, that one match they had at SummerSlam alone would be enough for us to consider this the best feud of WWE in 2002. But when we add HBK's big world heavyweight title win in the Elimination Chamber at Survivor Series that November 2, a belt he took from the Game, it only makes it all the better. And Shawn Michaels would also be a part of the best feud of 2003 as well as it happens, though this one would see him go up against Chris Jericho instead. Ah, yes, here was a story of a master and a student if there ever was one. Because while Y2J had never been trained by HBK, he was seen as a spiritual successor to him in many ways with his in-ring style. So when the pair met in the ring at WrestleMania 19, then it was pure magic and possibly the best single match of that show. Of course, what sent this over the edge as the best program of the year in WWE, however, was what came after the bout was over, when upon losing clean, Jericho at first appeared to be giving Michaels a show of respect in the form of a hug, only for him then to turn on his hero by executing a low blow and reminding us all why he was such an effective heel back in the day. But let's move away from heel antics for now, because 2004 was all about the rise of a beloved babyface in the underdog tale of Eddie Guerrero.
Yes.
Come on now, there was no way we couldn't include Eddie Guerrero's rise to the top here, as it was one of the biggest feel-good moments in wrestling history. Seriously, seeing Latino Heat go from the pits of addiction to the point where he was even briefly fired by WWE, all the way to the peak of the mountain, was about as cathartic as it got for a wrestling fan back in 2004. And it all happened at No Way Out, as this was when Eddie did the impossible by dethroning Brock Lesnar as WWE Champion. Sure, he would lose that belt to JBL before the year was over, but for that few-month period, he was the champion. There was no one hotter in WWE than Eddie Guerrero. But would that be the case in 2005? Well, no, because in 2005, we would have moved on to a new hero when Batista left Evolution.
Yep.
Yes, there's an argument to be made that this is the best WWE storyline of the 2000s overall,
And
as it was
the
played
top best babyface turn out as well too.
out so perfectly. Sure, the building blocks were all laid out the year prior, but it was in 2005 that things finally reached their peak when Big Dave won the Royal Rumble. And when he did this, it suddenly left his Evolution stablemate Triple H worried that the Animal was going to come after his World Heavyweight title. To be fair though, he was right to be worried about this, because in the end, after getting tired of being bullied around by the game, Batista chose to give the thumbs down to his leader by challenging him at the Showcase of the Immortals, the very show he then went on to beat Triple H at to win the big gold belt for the first time in his career. But while this storyline ended badly for Triple H, he would bounce back the following year, because that year he would be a part of WWE's best storyline again when DX reunited. That's right, this was one fans had been hoping for ever since Shawn Michaels returned to the ring in 2002. And it was in 2006 that they finally got it, as it was after months of teasing that Triple H and Shawn Michaels finally reunited as a duo. Sure, it would be a lot more comedic than their original earlier incarnation, but that was because by then both men were fathers and much older than they'd been before.
And to be honest, definitely one of the best one. This and their first time as faces when it was the DX Army with Road Dogg and X-Pac were their best, was the best DX run in my opinion. It was World 2 though. It's no doubt about that. I mean, the first one I say is like a good third as well too, but those two was like the best runs for them.
And they weren't exactly wrong to go in this direction, because fans seemed to enjoy the new version of the Degenerates, with them tuning in every week to see Shawn and Hunter's attempts to make fun of the McMahons. That's right, it was all a blast of nostalgia, and it created the best thing going in WWE in 2006. As for 2007 though, well, that would be back to a strictly in-ring feud in the form of The Undertaker versus Batista. What made this one so special? Well, like with the Hardys, Dudleys, and Edge and Christian feud from 2001, it was less about backstage angles or interview segments, and more about everyone involved going 110% once it came time for the bell to ring. So because of that, we got 4 excellent singles bouts between the Dead Man and the Animal throughout 2007, each time with a World Heavyweight title on the line. Of course, the one people probably remember best today is the WrestleMania 23 match, and that's not just because it was arguably the best of the bunch. No, it was also the start of a streak within a streak, as it began a 7-year stretch of Mark Calloway stealing the show at the Showcase of the Immortals. Sadly for him though, come 2008, there was no stealing the show overall from the best storyline of that year, Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho, round 2.
Yeah, I was wondering if it's going to be that. Yeah. Oh yeah.
Yes, if the first round of Shawn Michaels versus Chris Jericho back in 2003 was great, then this was on another level, as this was the year where the whole thing became legendary. Quietly, one of the best programs WWE has ever given us. And it all started after HBK garnered Y2J by faking a knee injury during a match against Batista, where Jericho was playing the role of special guest referee. Obviously then, this gave Chris a lot of reasons to be angry, and that only made his new heel character all the better, as there was a justification behind what he was doing and saying. Really, it wasn't that dissimilar to what Bret Hart was doing back in 1997. But while this feud played out throughout the majority of 2008, by 2009 it would be over, and the mantle of the best storyline in WWE would have moved over to the age of Orton instead. Really, you could argue this was the point Randy Orton fully arrived as a main eventer in WWE. As well, he'd certainly been positioned on top of the card prior to that. It was in the lead up to WrestleMania 25 that he first truly felt like the guy. How did he?
This is crazy, the man Orton right here. Oh my God. Yeah, this is when he was crazy. Orton, clean face, glassy eyes. Oh man, no wristband, nothing. Oh my God.
Do this? Well, by adding a new wrinkle to his character in the form of his intermittent explosive disorder.
Oh yeah, the wristband.
Obviously, then, because he had that condition, it made it so that he could do the dastardliest things at any time. Things like punching his boss in the head. Yes, as far as heels went in WWE in 2009, Randy Orton was right at the top of the pile, and that was evident through this entire angle. Come the new decade, though, an all-new heel would have risen to the top, as 2010 would be all about CM Punk's Straight Edge Society. Sure, he might have gone on to become a bigger star, but in 2010, the Straight Edge Society was arguably the best work CM Punk had done up to that point. And that was because with him using his heelish attitude to play a dynamite villain, he was able to get everyone in the audience to hate him. And not just him either. No, also his stablemates in Luke Gallows, Joey Mercury, and Serena Deeb, with each of them playing the role of cult members who were absolutely devoted to their leader. How about the fact it was also the year of Phil Brooks' great feud with Rey Mysterio, the one which eventually forced him to shave his head and wear a mask for a while as he tried to hide this from audiences. And 2011 would see the momentum continue for CM Punk, as while this stable would have died by then, he'd still be a part of WWE's best storyline of the year in the Summer of Punk. That's right, it might have been done before this in Ring of Honor, and it might have fizzled before it should have, but there was a couple of months stretch in there during the summer of 2011 where CM Punk became the hottest thing in all of wrestling. And it all began with him cutting that famous pipe bomb promo on an episode of Raw in the lead up to Money in the Bank. What happened after that? Well, Money in the Bank itself. The night where Punk beat John Cena for the WWE title, and from there, as far as everyone in the audience knew, left forever with the belt in tow as he was no longer under contract. Really, this was one of the better examples of reality and fiction bleeding together for a wrestling angle, something akin to the work of a Brian Pillman. And even if it didn't get the ending it deserved, it was still the best storyline.
Torn quad Nash.
Of WWE in 2011 by a clear distance. That said, CM Punk would not be part of WWE's best angle in 2012, as that year things would shift over to the feud between John Cena and The Rock. Now, in truth, this feud started the year prior during WrestleMania 27, but it wasn't until WrestleMania 28 in 2012 that things finally reached the ring in what was, at the time, being billed as a once-in-a-lifetime match. Really, it was about as close as the PG era could get to recreating the magic of Hulk Hogan vs. The Rock a generation prior, and it led to WWE's biggest pay-per-view buy rate of all time. Who won? Well, to the surprise of some, it would be the Great One who came out of the evening the victor. But then that was done so a rematch could be set up the following year where Big Match John would get his win back. Not that this would be enough to make Cena Rock the best storyline of 2013 as well, though. No, that year a force of nature would have taken over WWE in the form of Daniel Bryan's Yes Movement. Now this one's been called one of the greatest stories WWE ever accidentally told because it was never meant to be Daniel Bryan at the top of the card. But that's what made the whole thing so magical, as it was purely by sheer force of will that the fans managed to get the underdog to the top. Sure, the American Dragon wouldn't reach the peak here, and there were large parts of 2013 where it looked like things weren't going to go the way the people wanted it to. But as Harvey Dent told us in The Dark Knight, the night is always darkest before the dawn. And it wasn't like there were no moments of catharsis for fans of Daniel Bryan in 2013, as this was the year he beat John Cena clean in the main event of SummerSlam to briefly win the WWE title, just as it was also the year that fans completely hijacked a title ascension ceremony with a tsunami of yes chants. All of this is to say that by the time the mid-2010s were approaching, Bryan Danielson was becoming one of the most over wrestlers in recent memory, and that's why the Yes Movement would also be the best storyline of 2014. After all, this was the climax of the entire story, which had begun the year prior, and it gave fans a feel-good moment to rival Eddie Guerrero's big title win a decade prior. Yes, after not even being put in the Royal Rumble and creating an audience meltdown in the process, Daniel Bryan eventually found his way into the main event of WrestleMania after he beat Triple H earlier in the evening. So when Bryan went on to win that world title match by beating both Batista and Randy Orton, the roof just about blew off the Superdome in New Orleans. Unfortunately, though, by 2015, Bryan would have to enter into temporary retirement on account of concussion issues, and this would mean the best storyline of that year would not involve him. Rather, it would be about John Cena's United States title open challenge instead.
Yes.
That's right. If you wanted to pinpoint a moment where John Cena went from being
I don't know why it's doing that again. Anyway, yes, the open challenge, yes.
issues, and this would mean the best storyline of that year would not involve him. Rather, it would be about John Cena's United States title open challenge instead. That's right. If you wanted to pinpoint a moment where John Cena went from being babyface who was maligned by many adult fans to him being a beloved elder statesman for everyone, then this was it, as it was the point he decided to step away from the main event and instead work on getting the middle of the card guys over. How would he do this? Well, by winning the United States title at WrestleMania 31, then going on a career highlight of a run where he put it on the line every week during an open challenge. Truly, some of Big Match John's best work came during this run, with his matches against the likes of Cesaro, Sami Zayn, and Kevin Owens in particular standing out. And while he wouldn't be holding that belt as 2016 came around, he would still be going strong that year. Strong enough that he'd be a key part of the best WWE storyline then, too, with him playing a chief rival to the Phenomenal One during the debut year of AJ Styles in WWE. Of course, the John Cena feud was far from the only great thing about AJ Styles' rookie year in WWE. No, a couple of ropey months at the start aside, everything the Phenomenal One did was a hit here. It didn't matter if we're talking about his Royal Rumble debut, his program with Roman Reigns, or his WWE title win in the autumn. One thing was for sure, in 2016, everything was coming up AJ. And this was a huge surprise to some, not because Styles wasn't talented enough, no, far from it. But there had been some concerns ahead of time that Vince McMahon wouldn't get the high-flying star. Thankfully then, this wasn't the case, and AJ would go on to have one of the best rookie years in WWE history, one which was right up there with the likes of Kurt Angle before him. That said, his world title run, a run which bled over into the next year too as it happened, wouldn't be enough to see AJ Styles have the best WWE storyline of 2017. No, that honor instead goes to the friendship between Chris Jericho and Kevin Owens. Sure, they might have started out this whole relationship as heels, but so lovable were they in their villainous antics together, there came a point when all fans wanted to do was cheer for the bromance between these two Canadians. And that made for some of the most must-watch TV. Yes, it had started the year prior, but 2017 was where the KO and Y2J relationship fully reached its apex. Why was that? Well, it was here that during the Fantastic Festival of Friendship segment, Owens turned on his buddy and set up an eventual WrestleMania 33 showdown between them. No, they didn't get to make this battle be about the Universal title, as many had hoped they'd be able to do, but there was still a belt on the line here. So when Kevin Owens walked out of that event the victor, he'd do so with a prize around his waist in the form of the United States title. But it wouldn't be the US title that would be the subject of the best WWE storyline of 2018. And the reason for that is because this story centered around the women for the first time, one woman specifically, Becky Lynch, and her meteoric rise to the top of the card. Now, there's something of a parallel here with the Yes Movement, as Becky Lynch was never supposed to get this over. No, in truth, her turn to a darker side was supposed to see her play the heel foil to Charlotte Flair, but when it became clear that fans saw her as the hero of the tale, the one who'd been screwed over by a friend, plans quickly changed. And thank God they did, because out of this we got the Man, a PG-era version of Stone Cold Steve Austin if there ever was one, someone who was, for a time at least, able to become the biggest star in all of wrestling. Needless to say then, this was quite an achievement, as no woman before or since has been able to become the undisputed top star of a major promotion. That said, while the peak of Becky Lynch's rise would actually happen in 2019 with her main eventing WrestleMania, there would actually be another WWE storyline which beat it out that year, the one which came to be known as Kofi Mania. That's right, there were two big storylines heading into WrestleMania 35. Becky Lynch reaching the mountaintop and Kofi Kingston catching fire unexpectedly. And in terms of the latter, it all started when Kofi Kingston got subbed in at the last minute during the Elimination Chamber bout for the WWE title in February. But while he wouldn't win this one, he would put on such a star-making performance that all of a sudden, this mid-card favorite went on to become a challenger to Daniel Bryan's gold at the Showcase of the Immortals in record time. And he wouldn't just challenge the American Dragon at WrestleMania, no, he'd beat him in a truly feel-good moment. But by the time 2020 came around, the world would be a very different place, and Kofi would no longer have that title in his possession, with this leaving a new storyline to rise up as WWE's best. What are we talking about here? Why, the Bloodline, of course. Now, this one was an easy choice, as if there was one storyline which would dominate WWE television during the early 2020s, then it would be the Bloodline. Hell, this tale of Roman Reigns turning heel and building an army of family members around himself would be a large part of why the company has had such a renewed wave of popularity. Yes, it all started in the summer, when after taking a few months off to look after his health during the global shutdown, Roman returned with Paul Heyman by his side, now acting much more like a mob boss than the friendly guy he'd been before. And so like that, the Tribal Chief was born, with him and his wise man Heyman soon to be joined by the Usos too, as Reigns made sure to keep his family close at every opportunity, partially because it helped to ensure he'd keep the Universal title around his waist. And that Universal title wasn't a prize the head of the table was going to be dropping anytime soon. No, he'd carry it right on into 2021 as well, as the Bloodline continued to be WWE's best storyline. Yes, if 2020 was about Roman Reigns establishing this new heel stable, then 2021 was about him cementing them as the undisputed dominating force in WWE. And the way he did that was by becoming the absolute centerpiece of the show, even when he wasn't there. That's right, while Roman had by this point moved on to having more of a part-time status, whenever he wasn't at work, either Paul Heyman or the Usos would be there to make sure things ran like clockwork for the Bloodline. And that all meant when the Tribal Chief did show up, he'd have a much easier time dispatching his opponents. Opponents like Cesaro, Edge, and Daniel Bryan, with the latter two being stacked and pinned simultaneously by Reigns at WrestleMania 37. Really, by this point it was becoming clear that the Bloodline was something truly special. And that was why, as 2022 came around, it would still be the best storyline in all of WWE. Of course, by 2022, the Bloodline was about to kick into another gear entirely, just as WWE was as a company, because this was the point Sami Zayn entered the fold. And it was his lovable attempts to ingratiate himself into the heel group which took the whole angle from being fantastic to the level of an all-time great. But it wasn't just Sami's attempts to become an honorary Uso which set the Bloodline on fire in 2022. No, there was also Roman Reigns' continued dominance on top. After all, it was during this year that he defeated Brock Lesnar to become the undisputed WWE Universal Champion. And it was also during this year that he defeated local hero Drew McIntyre at Clash at the Castle, in a bout which many at the time thought the Scotsman was destined to win, all with a little help from new recruit Solo Sikoa, of course. Would he continue to be champion by 2023, however? Why, yes he would. And that's why that year became the fourth year in a row where the Bloodline was by a clear distance the top storyline in all of WWE. This year, though, it would be a different dynamic for the heel group, as it would be in January that Sami Zayn finally left after deciding he'd had enough of Roman Reigns' bullying ways. And that set up a big world title shot for him in his homeland of Montreal at Elimination Chamber, a match he would ultimately lose. But then Sami wouldn't be the only big challenger losing to the Tribal Chief in 2023, as Cody Rhodes would also fail in his first attempt to get the job done at WrestleMania 39. So as a result of this, by the time the summer was approaching, Roman Reigns would have crossed the 1,000-day mark as champion. And that would all lead into the next phase of the angle, the Bloodline Civil War. That's right, after both Jimmy and Jay exited the stable after also suddenly waking up to Reigns' abuse, it would be full-blown faction warfare as they spent a good part of the remainder of the year doing battle with Roman and Solo, as for the first time, it felt like the end might truly be near for the mighty head of the table. The only question was, would that end finally come in 2024? Yeah. Why, yes it would, because this was the year where the best storyline in WWE was Cody Rhodes finishing his story. That's right, it couldn't be anything else, could it? After all, this really was a high watermark of the current Paul Levesque era. And what makes it all the better is that it came so close to not happening at all. Yes, after WWE originally changed things by having The Rock challenge Roman Reigns at WrestleMania 40 instead, they were forced to pivot back once again as it became clear all people wanted to see was Cody win the big one on his second attempt. And that's just what he did, as it was at WrestleMania 40 that, in a Bloodline Rules match, Roman's reign of dominance finally ended when the American Nightmare pinned him 1-2-3 in the middle of the ring to a monster ovation. With this starting a new championship era, as from there, Rhodes went on to represent the company as its babyface ace. But while he still would be in possession of this belt once 2025 came around, his run on top would not be the best storyline of that year. Rather, it would be the retirement tour of John Cena. Now, we know 2025 isn't over yet, but it feels pretty safe to say at this point that the dominating angle for WWE this year has been the last hurrah of John Cena. Sure, the heel turn was a controversial move, but it certainly got fans' attention, and it led to Big Match John going on to WrestleMania 41 to beat Cody Rhodes, in the process becoming the record-breaking 17-time world champion. And since he's now turned babyface again, it means the last few months of Cena's run will now see him get to play the hero again as he finishes up his legendary career. Really, the biggest question at this point is who will that last match be against? An old rival he hasn't met up with again yet this year like AJ Styles, or perhaps a newcomer such as Braun Breaker? We guess we'll just have to wait and see how things play out. One thing is for sure though, by the time all is said and done, John Cena's retirement run will have earned its spot amongst the best WWE storylines of the 21st century, just as every other example we've looked at today has too.
Definitely. This was a good video to look at as well too, though. Definitely some good stories as well. Some it was like, but there was other that was like, had me give some some old goosebumps for that though. Other than that, if you like my reaction to this, like, share, subscribe to my YouTube channel. It's your boy T-Bird signing off. One love.